Donna Brazile drops another nuke, this time on Michelle Obama. Last week, former DNC chair Donna Brazile revealed that Hillary Clinton rigged the 2016 Democratic presidential primaries against Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Now she is speaking out once again, and this time she's talking about former First Lady Michelle Obama. The Washington Examiner reported that during an interview on Fox News on Wednesday night, Brazile told host Tucker Carlson that she should have channeled Michelle instead of telling her critics to go to hell earlier this week after she exposed Clinton. I want to channel another woman who I admire so much, and that is Michelle Obama, who said, "When they go low, you go high," Brazile told Fox News host Tucker Carlson on Wednesday night. And perhaps what I did on Sunday when I told some of my detractors to go to hell, as you well know, some of my conservatives know that I have always had a quick tongue. I've told people in the past what I really feel. I should have channeled Michelle and just go higher. She's sick. This woman is deranged. This comes after Brazile told ABC's this week on Sunday that her detractors in the Clinton campaign can go to hell. "I'm going to tell my story," she said, "when I'm supposed to be the only person who is unable to tell my story." Brazile also talked to Carlson about Clinton's failing health, describing what she remembered about Clinton's fainting on 9/11 anniversary before the 2016 election. So you have this scene in the book that's marked upon when Hillary's really sick. You say she's overworked and she's got a bronchial infection, maybe pneumonia, and she's so sick that you have this moment when you think maybe we need to replace her, maybe we won't be able to continue, and that's the point at which you said maybe the vice president would be a good replacement, Carlson began. That's such a big deal that it was striking when I read that. I thought, here there are a thousand reporters covering this campaign, and not one of them picked up anything like that the candidate's health was that bad, that she was being considered maybe not able to finish. Do you think reporters knew that? How could they not know that? Well, let me just tell you, I had a lot of reporters that were calling my office, calling my home, texting me, sending me emails. Brazile responded. In fact, there was a reporter that I mentioned that broke the story to me that she had fainted, and I immediately called up to Brooklyn and I tried to reach people on the road with her to find out if this was a rumor, as you well know, with the Russian meddling in our campaign. And yes, it happened. There were so many rumors that you had to debunk, and so by the time I saw the video, when the video went viral, you can imagine what was happening within the Democratic Party, what was happening inside of the inner circles. "Oh, I remember, and everything was fine. Everything's fine," Carlson interjected. "Every 5 to 7 minutes, Hillary is a friend," Brazile added. "I cared about her health, I cared about her campaign, but the last thing I wanted to know how she was doing. I wanted to know if she was okay." What a crock this Brazile character is, you know. She admires Michelle. Michelle is a disgrace to America, so what does that tell you about Brazile and the whole Democratic Party? I'd add Hillary, Michelle, Obama, and all the crap in the Democratic Party. When they go low, we go high. You's proved it to us how high you's went, you creatures. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and again, thank you so much for watching.
The Washington Post story on Alabama Republican Roy Moore is based on a series of on-the-record interviews with Lee Kaufman, who says she was 14 when Moore, a 32-year-old prosecutor, befriended her and then sexually accosted her. Here's a Post reporter's description of what happened.
So the first time there was kissing, and then the second time he took off her clothes, he took off his own clothes.
I have not been guilty of sexual misconduct with anyone. These allegations came only 4.5 weeks before the general election on December 12th. Why now?
3 other women told the Post on the record that Moore pursued relationships with them when they were between 16 and 18, but that nothing was involved more than kissing. Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and a Fox News contributor. Juan Williams, co-host of The Five. And Erin McPike, senior advisor to Media Group of America, owner of Independent Journal Review. Molly, let's take a look at this Washington Post story. 4 women who don't know each other, who didn't put this out. The reporters came to them. And Lee Corfman, the woman who says she was 14 at the time, says she voted for Donald Trump. Does it sound like an orchestrated against Moore?
I think this is, a very important and explosive story. The problem for discussing the quality of this news is that this is in a media environment where many other explosive stories about sexual assault that are well-sourced have fallen apart. It was less than 3 years ago when Sabrina R. Erdely wrote the cover story for Rolling Stone about a gang rape at UVA. Media praised her for this story. They praised the courage of everybody involved, and they sort of reflexively accepted this story, and it turned out that it was completely misreported. Yep. The fraternity that was maligned won $1.65 million. A dean who was maligned won $3 million.
Legally,
well,
at least.
It's not just it's not that, because there's a different standard on that. What I'm saying is people are used to stories about sexual assault not necessarily coming to be as credible as they are first presented. The UVA or the Duke lacrosse team was also accused of a gang rape. That story fell apart. The people who were accused were actually declared innocent. So there is a media environment where people are not necessarily going to accept whatever they hear from a media outlet just because they're told it's well-sourced.
Okay, but now also Lee Corfman, again, this is the woman who says she was 14 at the time. The Washington Post talked to 2 friends that she told at the time she was dating an older man, talked to her mom, who was told a decade later. And in an interview on the radio with Sean Hannity, Roy Moore went through all this, said it was politically motivated and so forth. And then he said this.
Do you remember dating girls that young at that time?
Not generally, no. If I did, I'm not going to dispute anything.
That was not exactly a hard denial, Lon.
No, and, so much of what he had to say to Sean Hannity was emphatic in saying that he didn't even know Corfman. But then he said that, and I think that what you just played will introduce doubt into the listener or viewer's mind as to what Roy Moore is exactly disputing, because it's not okay to have been going out with teenage girls.
And then there was this tweet from Roy Moore, who's, of course, Senate election battles next month. Put this up on the screen. The Obama-Clinton machine's liberal media lapdogs just launched the most vicious and nasty round of attacks against me I've ever faced. What does this have to do with Obama and Hillary?
Absolutely nothing. And here's the thing. To your earlier point about the stories that broke down, that was 3 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. And I think the important thing with this story is that you had all 4 of these women on the record. Not only that, the Post interviewed Lee Corfman 6 times. 6 times they got her on the record to check consistency, talk to her mother. They talked to friends of the other women who were involved, because they wanted the story to be airtight and control for all of these complaints. And I think they did a great job of that, because that story is airtight.
Now, I take your point, Molly, that not every allegation is true, and you pointed to some past instances, but a few conservative media people are defending Roy Moore, but mostly not. National Review said he should quit the race.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is a well-timed hit, and it's a very difficult thing for people to talk about. I mean, stories about sexual assault are always very difficult to report, and they're very difficult to respond to. And it doesn't mean that when you take them seriously that you just reflexively accept claims or reflexively accept denials. There's been quite a bit of fervor about this story, not as much maybe calm thought about it, but it's just a very difficult story, and these are very serious allegations. I think it's important.
Molly, part of this is in the political context. The journalistic stories you cite, yes, they were screwed up, but in the political context, what people are worried about here in Washington is the loss of a Republican seat in the U.S. Senate to Doug Jones, the Democrat, and right now that race is very tight. And the idea would be, the Democrats or some political apparatus by these mean Democrats set this up to defeat Roy Moore. The problem is that people are now saying, well, exactly how is Ms. Corfman a part of that machine? How is, and no one has an answer. What is in her interest to come out and expose herself to the kind of criticism, the allegations that she's just part of the Democrats at this point. She's a Trump voter.
Here's part of the criticism. So interestingly, the Moore campaign gave this story in advance to Breitbart, the conservative media site, giving the list of post questions was by a little bit, leading off with the judge's denials. But then you had Steve Bannon, the chairman of Breitbart, obviously the former Trump White House advisor, saying this and hearkening back to the fact that it was the Washington Post that in the campaign broke the Access Hollywood tape about Donald Trump. Take a look.
Is it just a coincidence that the Bezos, Amazon, Washington Post did the Billy Bush hit and they did the hit on Judge Moore? Yeah, just a complete random thing in the universe, right?
Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. What do you make of that line of criticism that because the Post had broken the story about candidate Trump, that this story should be suspect?
It's all about ginning up the base. And the Moore campaign obviously went to Breitbart before the Post broke the story. I have seen campaigns try to get ahead of stories before, but not like that, to actually reveal everything that is in the story that is going to be coming out. That seemed to me a bridge far that I've never seen crossed before.
Let's talk about selective outrage in the media, because you have, in pundits and politicians, you have liberals now, of course, denouncing Roy Moore. He was a controversial figure before because of comments on homosexuality, and he had been removed from the state Supreme Court in Alabama. And then you have Democrats. Democrats who are, when they're accused of sexual misconduct, then there's hand-wringing, well, we don't know if these allegations are true. So it seems to a lot of people that the reaction can be partisan depending on who is the target of these accusations.
It doesn't just seem that way. It is that way. I just want to first off remind people that George Stephanopoulos pulled the original Bannon trick here, or pulled the original trick of going to Breitbart when Washington Free Beacon had the story about him giving $75,000 to Hillary Clinton. They asked him for comment. He ran to Politico instead. It's a totally mean move, but it's one of these things that we see. Right. But it is true that this is in such a bigger context. People are pretending that this is just a story about, a very genuine story about this person. The Washington Post has positioned itself as part of the resistance. They have decided to take a very hostile, oppositional stance toward the president, and that means the president's agenda, the Republican Party in general. And so people are skeptical about the timing. They're skeptical about the story itself, and it's actually somewhat unfair because the story should stand or fall on its own merits. But it's part of a larger context where the Post has been so oppositional.
Can I jump in for a second? So to your question, Tamala, just a minute ago, that it is based on partisanship, I take issue with that, and here's why. On Friday in Colorado's NPR station, as well as the Denver Post, broke a story about a state representative who is a Democrat named Steve Lepsek, who another Democratic state representative by the name of Faith Winter accused of aggressively sexually harassing her at the end of last year. In the same story breaking it, the Democratic Speaker of the House called for that representative's resignation, and she said, and I quote, "I believe there should be extremely high standards of conduct for the legislature." If you're calling for the resignation of a member of your own party in the story breaking
there are certainly exceptions where people take on. Mitch McConnell didn't wait very long before going after Judge Moore. And by the way, when it was Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, a lot of liberal pundits and politicians made excuses for the president. But just to finish on the Washington Post, so yes, the editorial page, which is run by a separate editor, has called Roy Moore unfit, clearly a liberal editorial page. I understand people take the Post reporting, but this doesn't necessarily make the story untrue. You have to look at the evidence, the interviews with the four women. Do they have partisan motivations? Again, Lee Corfman voted for Donald Trump and George W. Bush.
That was my point. And the second point to make here is, at some point, given Roy Moore's evangelical projection that he is a man of God, and his stand on the Ten Commandments, at some point I think it's very difficult for people. We're in the Bible Belt in Alabama. I think it's really on them to make a decision here. And when it comes to questioning the Post politically, part of the resistance, not a resistance, I don't know. But I'll tell you this. If you are looking at that story in and of itself, in terms of the sourcing and in terms of people on the record, as a reporter, I've been a reporter for a long time. That story is pretty tight.
Right, but of course, a lot of people are either not going to believe the media or going to say, hey, this was 38 years